Welcome back to Ditch the Debate podcast. I'm your host, Tanil, and today I am so excited to introduce Jen Fontanilla, who is a certified money coach, TEDx and international speaker, and seven-time author. She's worked with brands such as the Walt Disney Company, Sony Studios, and Target. And as a financial advisor, she has helped clients such as Goodwill, Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and the US Air Force ROTC to improve their financial literacy and money mindset. With a unique skill set that brings together 25 years of experience in graphic design and 19 years experience in the financial industry, Jen is able to bridge the gap between her clients' mindset around money and their creative abilities to reveal their financial brilliance and empowers them to live a prosperous and creative life. As a money mindset coach, she helps creative professional women step away from the starving artist stereotype so they can make the money that they deserve. Welcome to Ditch the Debate, Jen. I am so honored to have you here, and I'm so excited about our conversation. There's so many things to dig into with your bio. What I would love to have a discussion on today is the topic that I think is spoken about a lot, but I don't think we've ever really gotten to the nuts and bolts of it. And that is, as mom entrepreneurs, how to have it all, right?
Right.
Can you have it all? Is it that you can have it all, but not at the same time? Give me your views on all of the good stuff in there. And once again, welcome.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for having me. First off, I'm so excited to be here with you and your community. But this is a great question. And I think as mothers who are trying to grow or start or run a business, that's something that's on the forefront of our mind. Can we have it all? The short answer for me personally has always been yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I really truly believe that. But I do also like that you added, but maybe not at the same time. Because there's so many factors that come into play, right? Do you have one child? Do you have four? How big are these goals and dreams that you're trying to achieve? Can you do them based on how much it requires in terms of time, effort, energy, and finances, right? So we have all these factors involved, but at the end of the day, I truly believe that we can have it all. And I think that it is absolutely a mindset. Do you have the mindset that, yes, I can have it all? I will figure out a way. I may not be able to do all 10 things on this list right now, but maybe I can do the top 3. Or are we looking at it like, no, this is the path I've chosen. I can't have it. There's not enough money. I can't do this. But if your mindset is in that direction, or if it is in the direction that I can have it all, whatever you believe is what will happen, because this is what you're manifesting. So it's very important that we pay attention to which path that we're choosing based on what our mindset is moving towards.
So with your experience and your vast knowledge on your mindset work, the terminology of where focus goes, energy flows, right? So
right.
when you are talking about mindset and manifesting and everything, what would be your advice when it came to the mom wanting it all? Would you say, focus on all the aspects that you want and sort of manifest that? And what would that look like, a sort of out of 100%, 25% each? Or is it focus on one thing at a time, get to your version of enough in that particular aspect, and then focus on the next?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think for me personally, what I have found is that I kind of short circuit when I was trying to do all of it. And I consider myself pretty ambitious. And then I've also learned from that, like, hello, you're going to burn out, or way too many things going on. And, sometimes we take on more than we can chew. So what I have noticed is that it requires a lot of flexibility. It requires a lot of slowing down. I think sometimes we think that we have to keep going and going and hustle, but I am not about that hustle life. And I think one of the best lines I heard from a mentor is that slow is the new fast. And I love that because we have experienced burnout. If you're a mom, you've experienced it. You know what that feels like. And then you just, you know, have you ever had that moment where you just, oh my gosh, and then you just crash, right? And you just sit there and you're just like, oh my gosh, I just need to not talk to anybody, right? Because we get into that phase of like, oh my goodness, there was too much I was doing, and now I'm burnt out. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to talk to everybody. Just leave me alone. But if we are running ragged like that all the time, it impedes our progress. So one of the things that I noticed that works better for me personally is that I slow down. I make sure there's intentional time to always slow down. Of course, you're going to have to ramp up things, you know, especially if you're, you know, in a launch or you're executing a program or whatever it is that you're creating. There's going to be those sprints, right? There's going to be these times where you do have to do it. But if you're doing it all the time, that's not sustainable. And that's why we end up with burnout. So what I found is that take maybe 1 to 3 big goals or things like that that you really, really would love at this moment, and be realistic, you know. So, you know, I used to be a financial advisor, and one of the things that I would talk with clients is, you know, we have your short-term goals within 12 months or less, then we have our midterm goals, you know, 3 years, 5 years, and then we have our long-term goals, right? So we can segment what it is that we're trying to do, because it wraps our brain a little bit better around what are we trying to do, so that it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to do everything at the same time. So it's good to just kind of have this idea of like, if there's one thing I could do this year, what would it be? How can I execute it? What are the steps to reverse engineer it so that I can feel good that there's progress? And I think one of the things I think I have seen work so beautifully is simplifying. I think we need to just stop complicating everything. There are many times when I've talked to people, especially lately, where they're saying like, oh my gosh, I don't know, I want to do this, and I don't know. And the one question I just asked them is, what is the one thing out of all the things you just told me that if you had to pick one, what's the one thing that lights you up? Like you just love it. And they're like, oh, I really want to do one-on-one coaching. I love it. I just love helping people make that transformation. Okay, then do that.
Yeah.
The other stuff, just that can come later. Just focus on that thing. And then they kind of laugh because they're like, oh my gosh, you're right. I'm gonna just do that. And I'm like, right, why are you complicating it? And I think that's what we got used to, right, Tennille? I think we got used to just making things complicated. And I get it. We're so inundated with all this information, and we see all these different people, all these different ideas, and we think like, oh my goodness, I got to do this. I got to do this Instagram thing now. I got to do reels, and then we get lost in all that stuff that we forget to come back to center and ask ourselves, okay, that's great. The rest of the world is doing that, but what is it that I want to do? What is the one thing that makes me happy, that I would find so much joy that I don't have to look at this and go like, I got to do more content, or I got to make a program. Because if that's how you feel doing it, I mean, why are you going to do it, right? It's not going to be fun, and it's not going to be sustainable. And you're eventually going to get to a point where like, I don't want to do this. I don't even know why I started doing this. It's because we allowed ourselves to get distracted by all the ideas around us. So going back to the question, break it up into different time frames, whether it's short-term, mid-term, long-term goals, and then find out what it is that you really would love to do that just lights you up, and then reverse engineer it. What are the little steps that I can take to get towards that goal?
Yeah.
Because I think one of the things as mothers that we need to feel is that I'm making progress, right? None of us likes that feeling where we have all felt stuck, right? We have all felt stuck. We're like, oh gosh, I feel like I'm spinning my wheels. I feel like I'm going nowhere. But if we're doing these little things that we reverse engineered, at least every moment we're moving forward, we're going to feel like we're winning. Because
Absolutely.
right, that's what I think we need to feel like. Okay, I feel like I'm making progress.
Yeah.
Because the one thing I will say I think we do not like, or we actually hate, is when we feel stuck. When we're stuck, we feel confused and nothing's moving forward. So let's stop doing all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, for me personally, I 100% blame perfectionism for the stuckness. I think as a mom, with, you know, the societal pressures and even maybe generational pressure, you just have always been followed that narrative of you have to be the perfect mother and you have to do all these things and be this person and all the stuff that's just not realistic. And yes, we may have seen our moms doing all this stuff, but their time was very different to ours, right? And
Right.
and the world is just moving so much faster, and having everything online and having, I mean, I'm talking to you on the other side of the world, like this never happened, so I'm very excited about the time that we live in now, but it does come with a whole bunch more pressure. And I think, we probably feel, or maybe we portray it as feeling more stuck than maybe our parents did, but it's just because of maybe the fast pace that we're in now that we can't actually allow ourselves to take that break, because then we start berating ourselves on that, right? So
Right.
I think, do you feel, because I think this hustle culture is something I do not subscribe to. It's not my favorite thing in the world, and I just see so many moms get sucked into it, and they end up telling themselves a story on how there's something wrong with them if they don't follow this hustle culture. And I have my own opinion of it on it, and I would love to get your view on it. Do you feel that maybe some of the moms are stuck in this hustle culture due to scarcity mindset?
That's a great question. I think it could be some people, I feel they might have that scarcity mindset. I think it also could be as simple as lack of knowledge or lack of awareness. So
Mm.
for example, especially on social media, especially on Instagram, you see these influencers, you see whether they're male or female, you see these influencers and you see like, they're going here and jet setting and whatever. And it looks like hustle, hustle, hustle. I mean, I hated this phrase from a friend of mine. He used to say, I'm sure you've heard this one, I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Oh,
Like, that
yeah.
is like the stupidest thing. Why, what good is that, right? And I mean, I'm not laughing about it, but what ended up happening was that he had burnt himself out so
Yeah.
much. He ended up going blind in his left eye. His health suffered. I mean, it was just horrible. I'm like, you need to stop because you're hurting yourself physically, you're run down, all kinds of things. And so he learned his lesson, unfortunately, the hard way. But I think we are just influenced by social media to
Yeah.
see that kind of lifestyle. And I think one of the things that we have to pay attention to is, are the people that are doing that, are they even in the same realm of how your life is? I've noticed that a lot of those people don't even have kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you're not even married. You don't have a household. You don't have children. So
Yeah.
why am I trying to live a lifestyle, comparing it to yours and aiming for that when they aren't even dealing with a fraction of the factors that we as mothers are? So that is something I think at the core we have to pay attention to. Like, is that person in the same situation? Are they even dealing with the same things and the same problems? Are they even in the same age bracket?
Mm.
So I think that's something we have to pay attention to. But yeah, I don't subscribe to the hustle culture. I think we've been easily influenced, but I think sometimes people might not know better. Sometimes I think, especially when you're new to business and you're trying to learn the ropes and you're trying to test the waters, you might be running into that early on and just automatically think, oh, that's what I have to do. It looks like in order for me to be successful and grow my business, that's what I'm supposed to do. That's what I'm expected to do. When in fact, that really isn't the truth. You can choose, however, if you want to do hustle culture way, have at it.
Yeah.
But if you don't feel like you don't have to, there is absolutely no reason for you to think or feel that if you don't subscribe to hustle culture, that you're not going to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people also get trapped in that. A lot of social media messaging out there is like, oh, you can make 7 figures in 12 months if you just follow this program or this method. And then they, jump into that program and then they don't make their 7 figures. And then they're like, oh, I need to hustle because this is not happening for me. And, I'm a failure and all that kind of thing. And I think a lot of moms get caught in that, which is terrible because I think we have more than enough on our plate with our loads that we carry. But it's really interesting that people are still on that hustle train, knowing that social media has also exposed that, it's not necessarily the right way. You have to be fully authentic within yourself in order to get to where you're going. And you get one shot, so why not enjoy it, right?
Right. And I think that's the key thing that you said, Neil. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Are you really enjoying that? Hey, again, if you are and you like it, you like the endless grind, have at it. It's not a bad thing. But if it works for you, great. But if you find that you're hating it, you're tired, you have no energy, you're constantly complaining about what you don't like, I think you need to slow down and reevaluate that, because you do not need to subscribe to that.
Yeah.
But it's really sad when I hear that, we know that there are people that feel like, oh, I'm a failure because I didn't do that. Like, no, you have the power to redefine how you want your success to look like and how you want to achieve it. It does not have to follow one formula, because there's like so many different routes to success.
Yeah. And what is success for you? Because it's so different for everybody, right?
Right. That is so important that you brought up what is success, because I was just actually writing about this the other day, where, I know people who make multiple six figures, successful in financial terms, but their personal life, it's complete crap.
Yeah.
Fighting with their kids, fighting with an ex-spouse, an ex-co-parent, whatever the case may be. They're in litigation, they're in court, they're fighting, money going here and there to lawyers. Oh, but you make multiple six figures.
Yeah.
I don't define that as success. I call that a chaotic life that I would not want.
No.
So I think it's very important to also pay attention to, you don't always know what's going behind the scenes.
Mm.
You only see a certain glimpse, and you don't know what people are dealing with all the time. You may think like, oh, they're making all this money. And I'm not saying that there are people that have that and aren't living amazing lives. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it's also important that you pay attention that there is also the other side, where there are people who have completely chaotic, sad lives, even though there's a lot of money. And so going back to what is success, for me, I look at it when you ever see that circle? It's called the wheel of life, right?
Yes.
It has the different lines. I always picture that. And I think to myself, okay, are all cylinders running at a high level? Like, are all the spokes at, averaging 8 or 9? Maybe 1 or 2 might be at a 6. Maybe we're in seasons of our life where like, yeah, this isn't doing so well, so maybe it's at a 3. But on average, if my wheel is turning pretty smoothly and a lot of the things on that wheel are functioning at a high level, to me, that's the definition of success, where I have wealth in all areas of my life, not just finance and career at a 10, and then everything else is hovering around 2 and 3. Like, that's a wonky wheel. We don't want that.
You're not going anywhere.
Right. It's just stuck right there.
I think it was Simon Sinek that said, whatever your success is, so say you focused in the season of life on your wealth and career path, you have to be very clear on what it's going to cost you to get there, and make sure that that cost is worth the fight. And I think that was such a clear way to sort of, well, for me, it gave me a bit of an aha moment, because I always saw wherever you're focusing your energy, there will always be a cost, right? Because you can't put your energy across all the areas. But you have to sort of have those areas in a decent phase. So you can't exactly, rush off and fight for your career and your financial situation when maybe your kid is sick, so you've got to sort of always weigh up, and they have to be at a certain level that you're prepared to go, they're good. If I just focus here for the next week or 2, like, that's not going to fall apart. And I think maybe that's where some people have a few challenges, or sort of fall off the wagon, is they just focus on that one thing that maybe, and again, maybe it's as basic as, what is success to you? Because if you're telling yourself that success is money and career, but you're not that's not what success is to you. Success is actually maybe freedom, to travel or have a 4-day work week, whatever that is. really get clear on your success, because if you now start chasing wealth and career, and I've seen it happen so many times where people are like, if I make 6 figures, or if I make 7 figures, 8 figures, then I've hit my level of success, and I'm a successful person, and all the things. And then they get there and it's come at the cost of their family or their partner or watching their kids grow up or their health. And they've sort of got there and gone, oh, this isn't actually what I thought it would be like, and I think it probably comes back down to just get clear before you go after it. What's your why? What's your success? Where you at? Then, have a conversation with yourself, and what's the cost?
That is a great question. And you're right. I remember the video that people were sharing all the time was Simon Sinek about the why. But the cost is such a great question, because I think people are only looking at the money more often than not. I get it. But the cost is so critical, especially at the detriment of your family suffering. There's many marriages that suffer, partnerships that suffer, children feeling resentment. Is that really what you want? And I think this is where we have to find a way for the business and family and other things in your life to coexist together. And I think this is where time management is super critical, making sure you're creating appointments in your calendar with your family. And I don't want people to misunderstand that this is not being mechanical, but if it's not in the calendar, it tends to not happen, right? Yeah. So I will schedule like, hey, we're going to the park, or my son's stuff is all in the calendar, his practices, like, hey, we're going to this museum or whatnot, but it gets done. Yeah. Because your children are going to get resentful if like, oh, you promised, you said we were going to the park, and this is the third time we're not going because now you're on Zoom again. It's like, you got to be really on top of things when it comes to scheduling, and then it gets done. So I think the other thing too that I want to add to what you said, which is so great, is the feeling of guilt.
Yeah.
Don't feel guilty. I mean, this is where we have to be careful with the decisions that we're making. But if you time block, if you make time for the family life, your spouse, your partner, your kids, church, whatever it is that you have in your life in these different areas, if you're making time for those things and you do it, great. And then you make the time for your business. There's a way to fit all of it. Mm-hmm. So going back to the very, very beginning of what we were talking about, can you have it all? I think yes. Here's the other thing. I think this was so huge. Learn how to say no. Learn how to say no. I think too often as mothers, saying yes to every freaking thing. You don't have to go to every party. You don't have to go to every outing. You don't have to go to every single thing. You don't have to go to every meet, whatever it is. Learn how to say no. Absolutely. Because if there's something super important to you, especially if it's you building your business, or maybe you're helping your child with something, or whatever it is, say yes to the things that light you up. Say yes to the things that you really need to get done. Say yes to those things that you put on that list, that you reverse engineered that goal that need to get done. Because if you're somebody who's afraid to say no because, I feel bad, or I don't want to say no, like, that is not how a CEO operates. A CEO that's making that money, they know how to say no. You have got to learn how to make decisions and not feel bad and own it that, hey, I'm choosing to use my time for this because it's for my family. I'm choosing to use this time because it's for my business. Because if you're saying yes to every little thing under the sun, you are saying no to the other things that you really should be saying yes to. That is hands down is like probably like the biggest thing that you can do as a mompreneur, learning how to say no, because too many of us are saying yes to everything because we feel guilty. Yeah. And we do not have space in this business that we're trying to grow and this lifestyle that we're trying to have. There is no space for feeling guilty. It cannot coexist with what you're trying to do. So get rid of that guilt and just own it and say, I'm choosing to spend my time in this way. So that is how you're going to have it all. It may not be as fast as the person who doesn't have a family or partner and all these other things, but you're still in the process of getting it done. You're still being able to say yes to the things that you want, and you are having it all at the same time as you're continuously moving forward towards that goal. So this is why I really do believe we can have it all.
Yeah, and I think something that we maybe lose sight of is enjoying the journey, right? And the journey, yes, of course, it's going to have your obstacles, but you need the bad in order to appreciate the good. And I feel like we just rush for the end result all the time, that we actually don't enjoy the journey on whichever season or whichever curveball or whichever challenge you're facing at the time. And we just rush through to get to the end. And then when we get to the end, we're exhausted and we're not really enjoying it as much. And then we're like, oh, what's next? It's just, we're just rushing through life, and we're not actually going, you know what? That was pretty good. Like, I'm quite proud of myself. I did that.
Right. Right. And I think it goes back to what you said earlier with Simon Sinek. Somebody can hit that 7 figures or 8 figures and they're like, oh, wasn't really what I wanted. Or now the things that you used to treasure are no longer in your life because you didn't stop and pause to think, did you really want this? Did you really think about what was going to be entailed in obtaining all this? And you rushed through it so fast, you didn't think about the why. You kind of plowed through everything, and then you're like, well, what did I do it for? We lost sight of the why. We lost sight of what was really important to us, and we didn't enjoy that journey. And then unfortunately for so many people, if they do choose that route and they execute it in that way, they end up feeling so much guilt.
Yeah.
They feel regret. And it's sad because a lot of it is, a lot of it is lost, and you can't repair or get back what was lost.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I can see it in myself when, so I've got 3 kids. I've got an 8-year-old boy and I've got 5-year-old twins, boy, girl. And I rushed through their baby stages. I completely rushed through it. I had such terrible postpartum with my firstborn, and I went through a lot of depression and a lot of bad time. So when I got to my twins, I was like, let me just rush through this so I can quickly get back into work and get money and feel, like I'm adding value. And I just sort of pushed myself through all of that. And I felt awful. I felt, I blinked and they were 2. And I was like, they were my last like babies. They were, you're getting rid of all the baby stuff out of your house. And I was like, I wasn't even present. Like I missed that whole section. And it's an awful feeling, really, really awful. And I just wish, it was normalized that you need to be present, and it's okay to be present, and it's okay not to make your 7 figures while you are a new mom or have small kids, because that time goes so quickly. And, you keep hearing it, but you don't actually, it doesn't resonate until it happens to you, and I just, I wish we could normalize it so much more, that this journey is so important regardless of where you're at. And yes, of course, money is important, but so is health. Money can't buy that, so it's like all these things that you have to weigh up your costs. And I think for me, the reason why I went in on my own was, of course, for the time, but I can't remember, I think it was Dean Graziosi who said, picture yourself getting to the end of your life and having a computer screen there saying, this could have been your life. Does it match? Or did you make the wrong decision somewhere along the line and you didn't get what you wanted? And that's terrifying.
Wow.
Yeah. Like, did you take that risk? Did you make that decision? And have you lived the life that you wanted? Because you're in control of that. And as much as people say it, a lot of people are like, oh, you don't understand. I've got a terrible boss and I need the money, or, I've got student loans, or I've got a home loan, or I've got all these things. And there's just a million and one different excuses. But you can absolutely take control of your life, and you can take that risk, and you can make that decision, and you can live authentically in your own business. And I think it's just, there's more messaging around the fear than there is around the good.
Right. I can relate, because I when my son was born, it wasn't planned, for one thing. I had just come out of a divorce. So people do the math. They're like, wait, you had a divorce and I'm like, the kid is not with my ex-husband. So I was a single mom because I can see the cogs turning like, wait, what? And I'm like, he was not from my ex-husband. So I had that. I felt like I was doing everything wrong at that time. And so I had my son. I was a single mom and I was a financial advisor at the time. And so I was at a point where I'm like, I don't even want to prospect right now. I don't even want to think right now. I just want easy money to come in. Because I was just like, I don't want to. It's so different, right? Doing your business and trying to generate the income versus let me just collect a paycheck and not think. And I ended up tutoring just because I needed something flexible. I needed something easy. I just didn't want to think at that time. And I had to put everything on hold. I was in the middle, like growing this business. And then I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't even know what's going on in my life right now. It's a big mess. Let me just do something easy. So I tutored for a couple of years while he was, growing up 1, 2, 3. I forget. I think I did it for like 3 years. So I was able to be present, but there was that feeling in the back of my mind. I'm like, yeah, I'm behind now. I had to put that on hold. So I have been there. I know what that feels like. But I also told myself, there will be a time when the season comes where he'll be old enough and I can ease back into it. I can go back to that. And it did eventually come, and so when I think about how do we achieve these different things, we have to pay attention to the season that we're in and just be flexible. And I think be loving and compassionate to yourself. Stop beating yourself up thinking like I'm behind, oh, I should be here. You're raising a human being. Give yourself some credit. That you made another human being come out of your body. That alone is a miracle in itself. So why are you beating yourself up? Because you have to slow down. You have to be present because like you said, Tanil, it goes by like this. You look up and you're like, oh my gosh, you're walking. You're not a baby anymore. And so life just goes by so quickly, especially when your children are little. And so I feel like you would have more regret if you're not present than that, then okay, I didn't go to that meeting or I didn't do the prospecting as hard as I could. You don't say that. You don't say those things, right?
Yeah.
You think about those memories that, oh man, I missed that. I could have done better. I have those regrets too. I wish I could have done this more with my son when he was little. But we do what we can. We do our best. But no matter where you are today, you have the choice. You can choose to do it differently. You can choose to take a different route in how you execute these things. But that's what I said earlier, slow is the new fast. Because you will eventually get to where you want to go. If you're doing these things at a pace and you're doing it because you're constantly making progress, you are going to be able to have this more holistic approach to your life and to your business. And at the end of the day, I think we all just want to have happiness. We just want to have joy. We want to feel like we're being productive. Like you said, I'm contributing. You can, but the contribution doesn't always just come in a form of financial means and gains, right? It's also my time, am I contributing my time, my effort, my presence? And at the end of the day, those are the things that our family wants from us, our children want from us, our partner, our spouse, the community or whoever. That's what they want. They want your presence as well. So I think it's so important that we also understand that it's not always the money. Is it important? Yes. Do we need it? Yes, I get that. But you have so much more value other than just the financial that you can contribute to everybody's life around you.
Absolutely. And I think, if you ask any child what their favorite memory is, it's always a memory with a parent doing something. It's not,
right.
Oh, I went to Paris, or, it's not like I flew in an airplane. It's a memory of quality time and presence. And I think, that's definitely something I don't want. If you look at the billionaires of the world, are their children able to say, every day my dad or my mom pitched up at my soccer game or at my basketball game or watched me swim a gala, they probably don't say that. They probably have help in the form of au pairs or family members. And I don't ever want my kids to say that. I want their memory to be mom showed up for me every single time. And does that mean that a lot of my time then goes into that, and there's a potential risk of, the revenue goals that I have being a bit delayed? Sure. But they're only going to be young for a short time. And then just now, who is mom? They don't care about me. They're teenagers. So
Right. You're at that stage. You're almost there. That's the stage I'm at.
Oh, wow.
He's 13. So I actually was just talking about this with a friend last night. I'm like, yes, okay, he's gonna be 13. I got 5 more years until he goes into college, and then I can really do these other things, right? So again, it's the seasons,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What season are we in, and what is it that we can do when we're in that season? I think it makes it easier too when you think of it that way, because then it can break it up into short-term, mid-term, long-term goals that we were talking about earlier. Does it mean you give up on all these dreams? No, it just means like focus on the ones that are in alignment with your season now.
Exactly.
And then plan, and then you have time, because some of these things require planning. Some of these things require time. So the things that are going to be long-term, start reverse engineering it now. At that, even, get an idea of what is it that you can do now to set you on the path to get to those long-term goals. Because, again, like when I was a financial advisor, I mean, oh my gosh, I gotta tell you, there were people that would come to me that were like in their 50s and 60s, and they're like, okay, I want to start investing because I want to retire when I'm 65. And I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, are you kidding me? Like, you just want to start now and you want to retire in 5 years? I'm like, it doesn't work that way. I mean, I'm good at what I do, but I am not Jesus. I cannot create miracles, right? And I'm like, it doesn't work this way. Like, you should have started. I didn't say it this way. I was very nice. I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, like, you should have started like 30 years ago. So I say this to share, no different than your long-term goals. You don't want to wake up when your child is now 15, and now you're trying to think of the long-term goals. Well, now how do I execute it? No, that's when it was going to get executed, but you needed to think about those things leading up to it. So you're not really behind.
Yeah.
Because you're going to have different goals. You're going to have different time frames for them. So you're always going to be constantly thinking of, what can I do now? Even if it's the littlest thing. Things take seasons. Things like farming. We all use this analogy, right? You have to plant the seed. The tree isn't going to grow in like 20 days. So for your long-term goals, what are the seeds that you can plant now? So that when your child is of age, they're at an older age where, like you said, like they're teenagers, they don't want to talk to you. Maybe that tree will be a sapling by that point. But did you plant the seed today? So think about those things that you can do now as a busy mom, especially if you have little ones. What are the seeds that you can plant today so that when that season comes, you now have a sapling?
Exactly. It's that whole day one versus one day,
Right.
Yeah, agree with that so much. So I have a question that I ask everybody that comes on, because I love the answers, and I love the way people's minds work and where they're at. If you had an opportunity to have a cup of coffee with one person, whether they're dead or alive, who would it be and why?
That person for me would be Walt Disney.
Wow.
The reason being is because I remember watching the movie Waltz Before Mickey, and it was in 2015 when the movie came out. Excellent movie. And it was showing all the things that he went through, because I mean, today we're very familiar with Disneyland, the Disney Empire, Disney World. I mean, there's, Tokyo, Japan, and it's in different places. But I was so fascinated by the life of Walt Disney before all that even came about. The struggle he went through as a child, the struggle that he went through trying to get this whole idea of animation up and running. And I mean, he had only a few other, animators with him, and these artists, and they were in this one small room, and it was just this interesting history of humble beginnings, right? Where they're just sketching these things. It's fascinating to see where it all started and what the empire has grown to today. And I would love to ask questions like, how did you do it?
Yeah.
How did you get past the rejection, especially as an artist? because I have a background in graphic design, so I can totally relate to the artist journey. And how did you deal with the constant failure, then the rejection, and what was it that kept you going all this time? So I would ask that, and then, depending on how, this scenario is, I would also ask him, what do you think now about the empire it is today? I would love to see, because this is I believe the 30s, right? So if he were to come back to Earth today and he saw what it has become, I'd be curious to see what his thoughts are on the technology that we have. I went to Disneyland recently with my son. I'm located here in Los Angeles, California, and we went on this ride. It was the Star Wars section, and it was called Rise of the Resistance. And this thing was like this giant pod thing that we're sitting in, and it's literally floating through this environment, right? And there's no track, and it's all acted out like you're the rebellion, you're fighting against the stormtroopers and all kinds of crazy. Back then they're dealing with flip animation, like just sketching and flipping the paper. And now his ideas have evolved to these elaborate theme parks costing hundreds of millions of dollars. And so I'd be curious to see or to hear what he thinks of what it has grown to today.
That would be so interesting. I remember, I grew up in the time of Popeye, and I think in the beginning they used to take his sketches and they would flip through to show how Popeye sort of evolved into that animation. Right. And I always used to look at it, and I used to try and reenact, and I would draw Popeye and then try and get him so that I could flip the pages like Walt Disney. It would be so interesting to hear if this even remotely touched his vision on what he had.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's amazing. Oh, you just took me back too. Popeye was my dad's cartoon that he watched when he was growing up. And he always repeats that phrase that Wimpy said, how does it go? I'll give you 5 cents for a hamburger today for a hamburger. No, 5 cents tomorrow for a hamburger today, or something like that.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But I remember that cartoon and the spinach and everything, but
yes.
so different. Now we have CGI, now we have AI, and the technology that we have today. It'd be so interesting to see how somebody from the past in those humble beginnings views the technology that we have in our present time.
And what it's going to be for this next generation, like when we pass, where we're going to be, because it's scary but exciting.
Right. I totally agree.
Yeah, Jen, thank you so much. Honestly, I am so, so grateful for your time, and it has been such a great discussion, and your insights and your viewpoints are absolutely priceless. I really am very honored to have you here, and I'm sure my audience is very excited to hear if you have anything going on, what's happening, what are you offering?
Yeah, first off, thank you for having me. This has been so fun to talk about all these different things, especially when it comes to mompreneurs. Yeah. But the latest thing that I've been working on is my book that just got published, and it's called The Creative Code, A Creative Professional's Way to Happiness, Wealth, and Joy. That's now available on Amazon, so check it out. And if you need to reach me, please send me a message, and you can reach me at on Instagram at Jen Money Coach. That's JEN Money Coach, or jenmoneycoach.com.
Perfect. I'll pop the links into the show as well, so that everybody can get everything that they need. And once again, thank you.
Thank you.